In this episode, I'm going to share the 10 most popular podcast episodes I've published this year. I'm also going to hit the highlights from over 100 newsletters and additional episodes that I recorded. I calculated, and I think in 2021, I spent over 500 hours researching and writing newsletter articles and recording podcast episodes to share with you every week. No wonder I'm feeling a little bit tired as the year is winding down. This is Invincible Career, and I'm Larry Cornett. If you have found my advice and interviews that I've been sharing to be helpful, and you would like to support my continued podcasting in 2022, please consider a premium membership. And that's going to give you access to my private Invincible Career community and the premium episodes and articles and challenges and office hours and everything I do every week. You can check it out at newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. This is my 10 most popular articles this year, issue 339. I just want to basically wrap up the year. It's been an incredibly busy year. It's been an incredibly stressful year, again. And try to summarize and categorize everything that I was able to share with you in 2021. What I've noticed is that when people ask for my advice on a career or work or leadership or entrepreneurial topic, I can usually point them to a specific episode or a newsletter article that I've written on that very issue. So you may already be a loyal listener and been listening for the past year or so, but I know that it's easy to miss something over the course of a year. I do. I don't get a chance to listen to every single episode, and there's things that I forget. So enjoy this recap and feel free to share it with a friend who might find some of the advice helpful. And I'm just going to quickly go through these things, and you can also read about them, and they're all linked, which is a little more useful, a little difficult to do on a podcast. But this is at newsletter.invinciblecareer.com, my 10 most popular articles and podcast this year. So I went through the stats for my articles, my newsletters. I looked at the podcast stats on Spotify and on my own hosting. And there were 10 that rose to the top in 2021. So I'm going to go through these in order. You may have heard these. Let me know if they sound familiar and if you found them helpful. You can go and leave a comment. Number 1 was how to relieve stress during these trying times. How are you holding up? And that I made a video for this as well, but this was kind of I think this was in January, when everything was, kind of hitting again. It was clear that the pandemic was not going to be over, and people were starting to get a little overwhelmed with everything. And I gave some advice about how to relieve stress in a healthy way and manage that. Number 2 was be a bridge to climb the ladder. Those who don't stall out in the middle. This is about being able to communicate and connect different types of people and professionals in the workplace. Number 3 was how to stop rambling in conversations and interviews, like in job interviews. And it was about how to be focused and more prepared and have a strategy going into these conversations. Number 4 was popular, and I did this for a little bit, but it was tough love you may not want to hear. So this was sharing some common patterns of behavior that I've seen and providing a little bit of feedback about that, and then doing that for some individuals that reached out to me as well. Number 5 was career success with Carolyn Say. She's a CEO of Compute Software. This was an interview I did for the podcast. If you remember Caroline, she's also on the board of directors for the Coca-Cola Company and Morningstar. Number 6 was career success with Irene Au, operating partner at Coastal Ventures. And she shared some of her advice from her Silicon Valley experiences leading teams at Yahoo, Google, and then going on to Khosla. Number 7 was improving your conversational skills. And it's a little more difficult to do this online, but it is possible. This definitely was something I've observed over the last 2 years as we're not going into meetings with each other anymore. So it's getting a little tricky. I feel a little awkward in person. So this was giving some advice on how to deal with that and improve your conversational skills. Number 8 was you'd better ride that wave. And this was about timing your career peaks and being able to ride the good waves that occur and take advantage of them. And just accepting that it is limited. There's going to be a time that your career peaks. I wish it wasn't true, but it is. And how can you recognize when it's happening and optimize that experience? Number 9 was something I think I published really early in the year in January. It was a simple framework for success, to manage your success in your career this year and helping you create a 2021 career plan. I'm sure I'll be doing this again in 2022, and it's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And then rounding it all out at number 10, 20 things you should stop doing. Say no to the wrong things so you can say yes to the right things. And talked a little bit about the things you should be saying no to and how to say no and not offend people, but how important that is. So those were the top 10. And then what I've done is I've tried to summarize all of the articles and podcast episodes into categories. There were more than 100 of them that I went through, and it's some of them are available to everyone. It's part of the public newsletter and the public podcast that you're listening to. Some are for the premium subscribers. So there are some private ones, and there's a private podcast as well. So there is a premium podcast that subscribers have access to where I talk about specific topics. I answer questions, and people send me either directly ask me questions, or they can record a question in their own voice, or they can send me an anonymous question, and I answer those as well. So there were a number about career planning and managing your performance. One was trying to figure out who's going to get fired, who's going to be fired this year. And I wonder if some of you might have gone through this, but 10 questions that can help provide some clues that you can see that it's coming. Another one was how to change careers, either a big career change or a small career change, and how to manage that successfully. And that it's always possible to do a professional pivot. I've done it a couple of times. It's not easy. And so I wrote about how to manage that. And that was a podcast episode as well. And then if you remember Sam Sycamore, I interviewed him. He had a complete career reinvention. He was a carpenter who pivoted into being a web developer. And he did that in less than a year. And Sam and I are still following each other. I've been watching his success, most notably on Twitter. It's pretty incredible. And it's been a real turnaround for his life and his career. I also interviewed Fiona Paget, who also did a bit of a career reinvention, and how she had to pivot and adapt and try to find ways to change her business during the pandemic and find ways to reinvent herself when she was living with her empty nest that my wife and I are getting ready to deal with as well. But it's been really fun to watch Fiona, who's a friend of mine, and her career kind of change over the years. And that was a fun podcast episode. Another one was mapping your career journey and how important that is. To be intentional about every step that you take to make sure you're going to get to where you want to end up, to understand the goal that you want to achieve. An important one that I shared, I think a couple of months ago, is why you have to ask for a raise or promotion. And how important that is now that we're dealing with massive inflation, over 6% in the U.S. So if you're getting a 3% raise, you're losing money. Your spending potential is dramatically lower thanks to inflation. And then finally, I had a checklist that I went through and I shared. An important one that you really should work through before the end of the year. It had 16 tasks that can boost your performance review, help you with a promotion request, or even if you're going to do a job search. Um, Speaking of job search, that's another category. So I had a bunch of articles about looking for a job interviews, and how to do really well with those. I already talked about how to stop rambling during your interviews, and that's really important. I talked with Dana Wu, who's a friend of mine, but a Silicon Valley tech recruiter as well. And she shared her do's and don'ts and some of the horror stories of what she's experienced as a recruiter for many, many years, just trying to help candidates be more successful and stop making some of those mistakes. An important one was how to instantly feel more confident. And that is super important during an interview. You have to be confident. So I shared some self-confidence tips that can help you with job interviews, with meetings at work, or even just social events, parties you might be going to right around now. Another interview with Andrew Shearer. He's the founder and principal of Brave Path. And so he's a recruiter. He has a recruiting firm. They do executive recruiting, and they also recruit other levels of engineers and product managers and so forth. And he shared some of his advice and his approach to putting his employees first at his company. And then a really important one is how to make potential employers compete for you. And it is hands down the best way and the easiest way to negotiate job offers. That's a really important one. And I really wish everyone would listen to that episode, read that newsletter as well. So then I have a category of success. So this is success in your career, professional success, your life. One was, how memorable are you? And it's true. The only people who get the most amazing opportunities are the people who are remembered. You can't attract a great opportunity. You can't become an opportunity magnet if no one thinks of you. So how can you be more memorable? I did an interview with Jeremy Baker. So he's the CTO of Retail Zipline, and he had a really unconventional career path of becoming an engineer and then moving into being an entrepreneur. And now he's an exec at a startup that's doing really well. And he is totally self-educated. He did not go to college to learn how to be a developer. So it's a great interview. And if you get a chance, listen to that. An interesting one was how to stop being a quitter. So many people quit. And I gave some advice about how to do that and be successful at doing that, and some tips and tricks for how to be more effective at continuing through and getting things done. And then there was a recent one, wasn't that long ago, is asking if you've ever felt like an imposter. Have you ever had imposter syndrome? And I shared 6 strategies for dealing with it and hopefully eliminating it. And that's something that I've dealt with my whole life, and I finally learned how to manage. Next category is living your best life. Interesting one I wrote is about, do you love where you live? And if not, what are you waiting for? And talked a lot about my decision. How long has it been now? Well, I left the corporate world 11 years ago. I talk about this all the time, but moved out of Silicon Valley up into an area where there's forest, and I'm close to Lake Tahoe and the mountains and skiing 6 or 7 years ago. And I was waiting until retirement. And it's like, what am I waiting for? I mean, what am I going to do? Finally move where I want to live and do the things I enjoy, but when I'm too old to enjoy them? And so I made a big change. And I decided I'm going to live in a place that I love. I'm going to make it happen. Another episode was how writing can change your life. And I've gone hardcore into writing for the past 6 years, I guess has been. And I do it all the time. I talk about journaling in the morning and using paper notebooks and using writing to put yourself out there and share your point of view. And I shared 3 ways that writing can make a difference in your life. Again, I revisited burnout because it's definitely happening. A ton of people, the great resignation has happened. People are tired of everything and they're burning out. And you can wait till it happens and quit everything and kind of maybe make some bad decisions. Or you can try to handle it before it's too late. And so I shared some advice about that. I also wrote an article called No, You Can't Have It All. And there's a podcast episode for this as well. Because some people think they can. And I'm sorry, but the reality is it's impossible. But you can have more of what matters. And that's what that episode was about. So if you're listening to this, you know where to find the episodes. Use your favorite podcast app, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, Stitcher, Overcast. I love Overcast. You can find them online as well. These are all also available to be played with an embedded audio player at newsletter.invinciblecareer.com if you want to check that out. But you should be able to find all of these episodes that I'm referencing. And this list is something that you probably would find useful at different times. Think of it like an index of different ways to be successful in your job and your career, your professional life, your personal life. So yeah, go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com and find this. It is my 10 most popular articles this year, podcast episodes this year, and you could bookmark it and come back when you're looking for interview advice or how to start a business or whatever it might be. Next one. Don't let a job kill you. I guess a lot of people decided that this year. They're like, nope, I've had enough. And it's true. A toxic work environment is terrible for your health. It's not good for you. It's not just annoying. It's not just anxiety provoking. It's bad for your physical health and your mental health. And speaking of that, I talked about how walking benefits your career and life, and why some of the best minds in the world walk every single day. And then right around Thanksgiving, I believe this came out, what makes you feel grateful, and how practicing gratitude is good for the recipient, of course, but also for you as the giver. So I talked a lot about that. I wrote a number of articles and recorded episodes about entrepreneurship and solopreneurship. And I believe in it. I believe it's a natural part of the evolution of someone's professional career. So one that I had was how to become a consultant, and shared the fast path to building your business as a consultant or as a side hustle, and how to do that quickly and painlessly, hopefully. Anna Kadena was a guest on the podcast, and she shared the power of storytelling, and she's a content strategist. And she's had a pretty amazing entrepreneurial journey. I don't know if she's ever had a regular 9-to-5 job. I think she had one, but ever since she was very young, she's had her own businesses. I also talked with Sammy Gardner. She's another career coach. She's an author as well, has some interesting books that are on Amazon. And she talked about how she redesigned her career to travel the world and shared how she works with clients. There was one I wrote and shared as an episode about how to find your puzzle piece partner or co-founder. So if you want to start a business, but you don't want to go it alone, you want a partner, you want a co-founder for your startup, whatever it might be, how do you make sure you're partnering with the right person? And I shared some ways to do that in that episode. I talked with Marvin Liao. He's a former VC partner. He shares his advice for founders, investors, and other people who are looking for financial stability in that episode. So check that out. Another founder, Bridget Granger, talked about how she's bootstrapping her startup and why she did that to build her Supporty app, which is all about the power of accountability. It's a really cool app, and it helps partner you with someone to hold you accountable for something that you want to accomplish. And then I met with Sherry Edwards. She's the founder of Resource Maximizer, and she's been doing the solopreneur thing for more than 25 years. And I thought her story was impressive. I love talking with Sherry. So look for that episode. And then finally, I talked with an artist, one of my favorite artists, Joan Kennedy. She's an illustrator and author as well. And she talked about how she had put off her dreams for many years and finally just had to come back to it. She couldn't stay away and built a successful creative business. So if you are a creative person, you're an artist, trying to figure out how you can make a living doing that, check out the podcast episode where I talked with Joan Kennedy. A few episodes on life lessons. One was how to repair your reputation. Things go wrong sometimes. It's normal. We're human. We make mistakes. But the one thing you can't do is just wait and hope it's all going to blow over and go away. That's not how you repair your reputation. So check out that episode. Another one I shared that people seem to really like was why things tend to work out eventually and why you shouldn't give up hope when something goes wrong and it feels pretty dark and you're feeling down and out. I've been there. Talked about my startup failing and how that impacted me and how it just works out, how you can bounce back and why that happens. And so that's an episode that you might enjoy if you're dealing with that or have dealt with that. Another one that's near and dear to my heart, late bloomers aren't doomed. 5 ways to make peace with being one. I am a late bloomer. Very much so. I've always been a late bloomer. And so I found this reassuring that there are some really good things about being a late bloomer and having the lasting power instead of being a hot rising star and flaming out too early. And then finally, no one is coming to rescue you. There is no white knight. There's no hero flying in a cape. No one cares as much about your life and your success as you do. So what are you waiting for? So check out that episode. A bunch on personal and professional development. So one about your voice. Does your voice sound strange? Are you not happy with the way you present and the way you speak? And there are ways to create your desired vocal delivery style. And I shared some advice in that episode. Another one about weaknesses. We always get told about our weaknesses in our performance reviews. And should you fix a weakness? Well, that depends. It depends on what fixing it really means. And that's what that episode was about. Let's see. Oh, I interviewed Matt East. Do you guys remember Matt East? He's a productivity coach. He shared some really good advice about how to plan your days, how to use accountability. He does accountability coaching as well. And how to schedule your fluid layer and habit layer activities. He has a book on this. And I believe there's a link in this newsletter, and I talked about in the podcast episode where you can get the book for free. So go look for it. Check it out. Let's see, to wrap things up on the public articles, there were 3 on networking. One was how to squeeze more out of social media and use it instead of it using you. Talked a lot about Twitter, that some people hate, some people love. I stayed away from Twitter for many, many years and then finally came back and realized how I could get the most out of it. And that's true for every social media platform, but you have to do some pretty intentional things to make them useful. An interesting one that is also near and dear to my heart, have you found your tribe? Your long-term success depends on finding your community. So very true. Every one of my jobs during my career was due to my networking in my community, people that I knew. My business depends on my community. That's why I built a community from day one. I think it's even more true now than it was in past years because we're feeling very isolated. We're feeling very alone. And that's why I created my career community. And I welcome you as a listener. If you are dreaming of having kind of the perfect water cooler conversations that you're just not having with your coworkers, that's what we're for. We're supportive, we're encouraging. It's a professional group of ambitious people. I don't tolerate any BS in the community. I've kicked people out. It's friendly and supportive. It's the people you wished you worked with. And there are people of all levels, all professions. It's really a great group, and check it out. Go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. You can discover how to join my Invincible Career community and be a part of it. And then finally, the surprising value of weak ties. Don't overlook the casual acquaintances in your network. And this is some really interesting research that you might think the best way to get a new job, for example, is to talk with your strongest connections, your best friends, the people you work with. But you overlap your networks with them considerably. And so it's your weak ties, it's your acquaintances that have broader networks that you don't have access to that can be the most valuable for opportunities and business opportunities, job opportunities, you name it. So check out that episode to learn more about that. If you don't know this already, I have a premium version of my newsletter, which gives people access to another premium newsletter that goes out every Monday, and a premium podcast episode that's private that they get access to as well at newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. And that has, an additional like 52 articles, challenges, office hour topics, things like that, and podcast episodes. And I focus those thematically throughout the year. So, for 2021 in January, we talked about goals for the year. So planning, identifying, and committing to goals that people want to accomplish in 2021. In February, I talked about something I call the story of you, but it's like writing who you are and what you've accomplished, your elevator pitch, figuring out what are your talents and strengths and defining your professional brand. Really important. In March, we worked on creating kind of your forever digital home, something that I was talking about a lot, which was figuring out where is your personal website going to be? Where do you want to have, your domain hosted, things like that, and building a website and sharing it because it's super important. It's the way the world is. Everybody needs a website. Everybody needs to manage your brand and carry it forward. April was all about writing and publishing. So I talked about blogging, publishing on Medium, how well writing on LinkedIn is doing. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn as well, and that's doing really well. And then self-publishing, using stuff for Kindle, Ingram Spark, there's Blurb, all kinds of things, but very accessible to people now who want to write a book. May was all about newsletters. So I talked about newsletter platforms, how to choose one, deciding what you're going to write about, how to build your audience. June was about showing your work, showcasing yourself. So how to leverage social media, how to get more out of LinkedIn. Talking about the passion economy, how people are making a living doing what they love, how to share your portfolio, and taking a look at your professional brand and doing an audit across all the places you exist online. July was all about measurement and assessment. So how are you doing on your plan for the year? Looking at metrics, using Google Analytics, things like that. August was all about networking. And I've talked about this before, but it's so important to build a powerful network and to nurture that network and connect with new people and grow it and figuring out what your community is going to be. September was all about public speaking. I love public speaking. I used to hate it. I feared it. I was terrible at it. And I've talked about this, how you need to invest in your public speaking skills. It's going to help you with everything in your career and your life. We talked about how to find speaking events, workshops, be on a panel, you name it. October, I talked about podcasting. Well, look at this, podcasting. But just dipping your toe in the water, how to be a guest on a podcast, and then thinking about hosting your own podcast and the solutions I use, the tools I use. November was video. And so looking at video platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Vimeo and Instagram, and figuring out what your videos are going to be about, how to actually do it, how to record, edit, and publish video, and how to grow your audience. And then finally, this month, the month of December, was all about performance. So getting ready to wrap up goals for the year, capturing all of your achievements and accomplishments, writing your self-review. Most people have a performance review coming in January. That's going to determine whether you get promoted or not. It's going to determine the size of a raise that you receive. Very important to do a great job writing your self-review. And then this week we've been talking about reflecting on the year, not just for a performance review, but just your personal life. Are you on track? Are you heading where you want to go? Are things going well? What were your wins? What were your failures? And then next week we're going to talk about, well, what needs to change? Usually life isn't perfect. Your career isn't perfect. So what are you going to do differently next year to achieve the success that you want in 2022? So there you have it. I know that was a lot. It's hard to listen to all that and digest it. But as I said, you can look back through in your favorite podcast app and look for an episode that might be interesting. Maybe this sparked your interest in a few of those episodes. And again, go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com and check out this list. It's a massive list of things I tried to organize and categorize to be more useful for you. You could bookmark it and check it out. And I just want to thank you for being a loyal listener. Thank you for sticking with us. If you have anything you'd like me to discuss in the future, in the coming year, topics you'd like me to cover, guests you'd like me to interview, reach out. I do not bite. Don't be shy. You can find me online. You can send me an email. I'm not that hard to find. If you look for Larry Cornett and Invincible Career and things like that, I'm all over the first page or two of Google. I've worked pretty hard to make that happen. So reach out. Talk to me. I'd love to hear from you. It would really help. Talking into a mic and not seeing your smiling faces is a little hard for me. It's hard for somebody who enjoys public speaking. So I'd really appreciate knowing that you exist and that you're listening. And I want to hear what you want to hear from me. So enjoy the rest of your year, enjoy your holidays, and take care. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you would like to follow upcoming releases of the show, please subscribe. And as always, I appreciate your ratings and reviews. Thank you. If you would like to learn more about Invincible Career and the podcast, you can visit invinciblecareer.com. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.